You're listening to the Yoga Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Katja. This podcast brings you information and resources to enhance the therapeutic effects of your practice based on a deeper understanding of anatomy, physiology, and the integration of modern science and research with traditional practices and experiences. Join me and my co-hosts Tiffany Cruikshank and Rachel Land as we dive into all things yoga, research, and wellness.
Welcome back. Today, we will tackle a topic or a target group that we find in yoga that we have talked about before on the podcast a little bit. People who are under pressure, who are high achievers. We talked about this in the context of athletes, episode 93, if you're interested in that. But today, we will broaden and deepen that conversation. And I have with me Katharina Claeys, who is from Germany, from Hamburg. And she's a yoga instructor, an educator, speaker, consultant with a focus on building resilience, nervous system regulation, and also on women's health. And she has a background in law, social economics, and public administration. So has a very rich background and experience of what it means to really perform under pressure. And in her work, she is working with high achieving individuals who are under pressure, either in their jobs, in their professional lives, or also in their personal lives, for example, in high risk pregnancies. And she offers her own blend of therapeutic yoga, breath work, but also trauma sensitive work, which is nervous system centered. And that is termed resilience yoga. So that's the blend of work she's offering. And also, when it comes to women, she has a heart project, which is called Safe Mama, which is really focusing on women who are navigating pregnancy, high-risk pregnancy, and then also postpartum recovery in a compassionate and also trauma-sensitive way. So welcome, Katharina. We're happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Katja, and thank you for the introduction.
Yeah. And I've already kind of hinted at the group we're talking about today, high achievers. Would you talk a little bit what you would understand by that? So what are high achievers? What are some of their characteristic traits maybe?
Yes, of course. So often we actually think about high achiever as board members, CEOs, doctors, like any high profession which is in our society and quite high leveled. But actually, it's a little bit of a misconception because it's more about the personality traits each one of us has. So the personality traits could be, for example, that they're very driven, focus-oriented, goal-oriented, also conscientious, and also a little bit self-critical. So when it comes a little bit to the down point, they tie the self-worth to success in their own way, of course, and also productivity. And they are quite fast in their own recovery, but often tend in the little tiny bits of prone to overdrive. Often, sometimes not really recognized in the beginning if they're not really tuned in. But it's kind of in the little traits of it.
Mm-hmm. I can relate to a lot of that stuff, I guess. And I assume that would also a bit more specifically maybe show up when they practice yoga or in their yoga context as well. So could you get that bridge or talk about that for a little while as well?
Of course. So I would always say it's the healthy ambition vs the dysregulated drive. And how it shows on the mat is that those people often tend to want to do everything right. The full pose expression. Everyone who doesn't see the video, I'm doing my little hand gesture because what is a full pose, right? But obviously they really like to go deep in their poses. They over-efforting sometimes. They like structured classes and often start with yoga classes which more are in the side of vinyasa or power yoga or yoga conditioning, where they can actually do this driving and pursuing personality of I can give a lot and I'm reaching a certain goal. So they prefer rather strong classes than structured or slow, let's say more slow practices. And they resist sometimes softness, but their strengths are definitely focus and curiosity, the why behind things, and the consistency. So if give them a homework, for example, they would definitely, do it and come back with it and say, I did everything you asked me to.
Yeah. So I like this, the good student in quotation marks.
In quotation marks, exactly, the good student. Yeah.
Yeah. So which as a teacher, presumably also maybe makes it easy on some level to work with them, which may reiterate that dynamic. But yeah, the good student in quotation marks for sure. And what would you say? So you describe what type of yoga they may be prone to. Of course, knowing that on an individual level, there's always differences. But I'm assuming you're observing that there are maybe reasons you could, put into categories or different groups that you can kind of identify among those, like that you see primarily on the mat. Is there such a categorization you could make?
Um, let's say in group classes, really the ones who, want to boost their performance and their focus and, they really want to go all in and go further. But in my therapeutic work, my one-on-one work, I would rather say like there are kind of three types of people seeking resilience yoga in the sense of, I want to step back and I want to maybe try a different approach. And those are sometimes people who experience burnout or are kind of on the bridge to it, so they feel quite exhausted and quite tired, and already on the quite far depletion side. And then there is like the middle ground where they feel like something is off. How it started for myself as well when I still worked in government and law. This constant fatigue. You slept 8 or 10 hours and you're still very exhausted and tired, or you feel like, I don't have a lack of focus. And then there's the other one who say, okay, I have a good balance of my work life and my life, but there's something missing. So they really want to boost performance and focus and try to work a bit more deeply into a body-mind connection and for the mindset further.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think especially the burnout category and then also the performance boosting one are maybe a bit more obvious. I find it quite special that you also work with a lot of people who are in kind of like that in-between state where they notice things maybe a bit off, or they may need some support because they notice their energy drifting or so, because I think that already requires quite a lot of reflective capacity, especially for people who are used to achieving at a high level and who identify with high performance and so on. So if they are noticing that there is a shift they want to address, I think that already kind of indicates quite good reflection, which I think is a great way to start working with them.
Yes, and I'm glad you say that because obviously I'm in my bubble and my community here in Hamburg. I'm also working internationally, but mainly in Hamburg. But I really feel that the people are getting more interested in their own bodies and their connections. So there is more awareness happening and saying, okay, this life or the speed of the world doesn't really fit with me anymore. And maybe those symptoms I'm experiencing are actually because of that. So they step into earlier prevention. Yes.
Yeah, I think I see that as well. So I'm also quite glad that this shift is happening and that conversation is being now being had at a broader scale, and that people like you, of course, also are specifically offering concepts or formats for them, making it easy to access as well. And I'm curious. I mean, those are quite different kind of goals or maybe needs that they have, someone looking for increasing their performance versus someone who really notices they're burnt out, their energy levels low. They probably approach the yoga practice, or the need they have is pretty different for those three groups. But maybe we can explore later how you would treat them or work with them differently. But I'm sure you also have like an overall strategy, an overall approach that you're offering in your work. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yes, of course. And I would say let's focus more on the people who want to boost performance and focus, and maybe the ones who feel a bit off, because you have quite a few episodes already on burnout and the wonderful program. So let's maybe go that part a little bit. But obviously, the approach is always kind of the same. So if I meet someone. So I'm also a yoga therapeutic specialist with yoga medicine. So of course, even in the hip model, or if I'm meeting someone who has, hip pain, or now like those aspects, it's kind of always the first thing we talk about is like the clear expectations from the start. Not only theirs, but also mine, because it's not a quick fix. We cannot just, book a one-on-one class, maybe say, oh, it's 2 classes and I'm gonna boost my performance and be perfectly focused and changed my whole mind, or I rather call it flexible mind, but we can talk about that later. So it's really about talking about the process, what we're going to do, and trying to see really yoga as a moving meditation. And everybody is different. So, one might tune in quite quickly with the breath and the movement, and the other one might still feel it's quite tricky to really, just try to embrace the transition, for example, from warrior B to reversed warrior and taking the breath with you. Some are just like, doing the pose instead of focusing on feeling and connecting the breath, for example, with inhale and exhale. And
So,
yeah,
go ahead.
so building trust is, I think, very important. Talking about the why, why are we doing this? Like, why are we starting a certain way? And obviously, like people who want to boost performance, focus, or like feeling a little bit off, I don't want to just put them on a mat and start, okay, we're going to meditate today. I will first meet them and see where can we start today. And maybe we do a little bit more of a movement class, a vinyasa, a power yoga, what they maybe did kind of similar before, what they already did in group classes, for example. And then actually see the person, okay, how are they breathing? How are they transitioning? And then also obviously talking about all the other implementation we can actually take and integrate. Mindfulness, breath, obviously we talked about. MFR, myofascial release with the balls, or just with the hands in the rib cage. I love that one. Acupressure, visualization, mindset work in general.
Yeah, so a whole mix of things, obviously, as your background's also quite rich, but basically you start by talking about mindset. So it is meeting them also with a bit of rationalization, which I think which with this group probably works very well, instead of throwing them into a practice, but really making them feel understood and kind of mirroring what their way of thinking, potentially, if you're talking in a professional context specifically, maybe. I think that is a very valid approach. I know not in the whole world of yoga this may resonate, but I think especially with this group, it could be a strategy that resonates well with their way of thinking, with how they approach things, and having a bit of an understanding of the why opens then the door to feeling and to being in their bodies, but kind of is or provides a way almost as a buy-in into the practice sometimes. Would you agree?
Yes, I like that you said it. It's really a buy-in, because those personality traits, if you actually open the door and say, you can question things, you can ask things, you can, because high achievers often question a lot of things. We just don't read just something and say, okay, yeah, that's it. No, it's really about questioning and the why, and making them feel that they're part of it, and integrating them, and yeah, opening the
Yeah.
door. Yeah.
It's a fine line sometimes, I find. Like you can get, off on a discussion on the stress response or whatever you want to introduce to them and explain to them. And then you have maybe their first class with them, and the first 30 minutes is just talking. And that's fine. And sometimes you have to, also make sure that there is space for maybe physical or breath awareness or whatever it is that also brings the body or the body awareness in a bit more. But I agree, it can be tricky sometimes to balance that out, but especially in the beginning, to gain their trust, gain their buy-in, gain their part in the work. I think that's one of the most interesting phases when I work with people. I don't know how you experience that on a day-to-day.
No, that's totally true. And I think that's why expectations from both sides are just very important to make them clear. And I always like I said, even with people with hip pain and work with them for a few weeks, it's really both the same. You tell them, like you just said, the first class might be just really us mainly talking. And sorry, was that too loud? Okay. So maybe the first class is just us meeting and checking in and talking, and then eventually doing an evaluation or just a practice. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And let's say you started working with them, or maybe they're on their own yoga path or path of whatever movement or reflection tool path they're on. But what would you say are then some challenges further on, maybe in their practice, and of course then also on the other hand side in your work with them?
So I would say definitely the perfectionism and the over efforting. So when you give them a homework that you maybe don't start with a whole class, you give them because they might end up doing that one every day. And you think, where's the pause and where's the break actually for rest and reflection and, tuning in? So that might be a bit difficult. And obviously then as well, the mental override and yeah, really the resistance to rest at first. I think that's really the main aspect where I feel like, it gets sometimes a bit tricky.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the yoga practice itself, it would be really important to avoid reinforcing this through cueing, for example, like cueing deeper in it. But it's rather like, for example, in triangle, not really the aim. Maybe they're very flexible and they're already having the hand quite down to the floor, but really maybe feeling the obliques, one side is stretching when you breathe. Do you feel the other one, like, one is lengthening, the other one is shortening, like really trying to build that connection. Oh yeah, I'm feeling it in my body. And how is it when I, lift my arm or lowering it down, like just in a different sense of cueing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, almost paradoxical. It's almost like making body awareness a challenge.
Exactly. And for those, it is really a challenge. It's quite funny because obviously you sometimes have like, it's a CEO, it's a board member, it's an athlete, it's like so high in their profession and high at stake. But yeah, this kind of connection is sometimes it's very tricky for them.
Yeah, I agree. And would you say you have some favorite techniques? You already mentioned a couple that maybe easing that path from, talking about mindset and making the why clear and then really transitioning into a state where they can tune into their body, into their breath, into, yeah, a whole set of body awareness exercises or techniques. Are there some things that you like specifically well? I think
Yes.
there are, yeah, we could talk about a whole bunch of techniques, but maybe just to start with that, just how to ease that path for them.
Of course. Yeah, I kind of let everyone, like after the first session, go home and give them one kind of little homework for the next time. And it's for everyone, we can just try it. It's not about adding something to the list, what they have to do or creating a new habit, but maybe taking a mindful shower, feeling the shower with all your senses. Smelling the soap, feeling the soap on the skin, seeing the maybe steam in the shower, like everything, that's really a 5-minute mindful shower. Same with brushing the teeth or boiling your water in the morning, It's just not kind of that multitasking, but really trying to shut the brain off and just being present in the moment. And eventually, when that gets a bit simpler, you can actually go into a deeper work into the mind and manifestation, for example. And I love that, for example, I have a little box I often give my clients who I work longer with. And they write little things down, or even me after a session, and put that in a little box. Maybe an achievement, a goal, a manifestation, anything maybe they felt today. And either they take the box home with them or they leave them with me. And after we're done, for example, they take that box home and then they can look at it. It's the whole process, it's the whole journey they experienced. And often, the brain is like already on the next step of success or the next goal, and we actually totally forget what we already achieved. And I think that little box is quite helpful.
I love that. I love both of those approaches. I think bringing it into their day-to-day, into the shower or into boiling the water in the kitchen in the morning. I think that's also a way of building sustainability, which often is probably the trickiest part. I mean, they are coming to you already. They are committed to changing whatever they want to change, either bring in some more relaxation or, increase their performance, but they're committed already. And that's one of their traits. They are committed. But sometimes their lives just don't have enough space to hold that commitment in terms of sustainability. So combining something that brings this work into their day-to-day, but also then kind of holds on to their achievements or to the process in physical form, I think is a great way. I think that's a clever technique there with the box. I love that one. Do you have any other special things you like to do with them?
So like the box I do for a while already, but and I love to take examples from their, for example, favorite sports, so I try to get to know them. A lot of people, for example, like tennis. So the summer was the French Open. So it was quite easy and simple. And finally this year I had like a real example for my little box, because Coco Gauff, she put a little tag in a box under her bed, I think. She posted that afterwards. And she said, I will win. Not I will maybe win or I will try to win. I will win. The French Open 2025. And then afterwards, she said, I won. And that's my manifestation. I, visualized how I held up the trophy and all those mindset aspects, or like I said, I like to call it a flexible mind because we always have to adapt in certain moments, and also make it, really relatable. And it's the same, for example, with the people who experience a bit more stress and feel like, the side of I'm a bit off, it's a bit weird, and trying to teach them the aspects of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And then going back into their profession to say, as a surgeon, obviously in the operation room, you have to be focused. You have to have a certain level of stress. It's the same when you teach something. It's the same when you're standing in front of a stage, a match at the, tournament, or a tantrum with your toddler, anything like that. But it's about like, trying to bring that curve down again.
Yeah.
And for that, visualization helps a lot. I would say breathing anyways, Nadi Sodhana or 360-degree breath, lymphatic work, MFR, acupressure, just adding that as well into the yoga practice. I think it's really, really helpful. And I always tell those people, because obviously in the physical practice, they like to push quite far, your body is your partner and you would not hurt your partner, right? Because we don't want to harm anyone around us. So why push yourself too far and too much?
Yeah, I like that flexibility aspect of it and that relationship aspect with your body, with your system. And I think especially with this target group, like we've also chatted about athletes on the podcast quite a bit in the past, but it's always that fine line between having to achieve, which reiterates the pressure, which makes that whole dynamic even harder. You have to perform in a specific moment. It's not just I like performing, but I have to perform at a specific moment, be it the surgeon, be it the athlete, be it the mom in whatever situation it is in. But also being able to find that exact right spot of nervous system regulation for that moment. So sometimes you have to make sure to upregulate, sometimes you have to make sure to downregulate, and to hit the right spot, to find that flexibility. I think that's where the sweet spot is. So there's not good or bad. It's not the sympathetic nervous system is good and downregulation is the best thing in the world and that's all we have to do. But our regular actual lives really require both from us, right? And in this right moment at the ideal amount, that's the trick, to bring all of that together and have the toolbox to kind of tie that all in together. Yeah, which is why I love that you are bringing up a lot of techniques, because that can show up so differently for each person. And having different techniques and offering them different techniques is, I think, one of the best things you can do for them. And then do you find for your own teaching, maybe we will also then at some point talk a bit more about the teaching side of things, but do you find it hard when you work with someone and you had something in mind for them that you did think that they would benefit from, and then to let go of that idea because it doesn't resonate at all? Is that something maybe kind of already taking a peek at the other side of the coin, at the teaching side of the coin, that you find hard, or do you feel that's easy peasy, that comes easy to you?
That's funny that you ask me that. So normally I don't teach kids yoga anymore. Like I did it sometimes. And yesterday I filled in for a colleague because, the flu season started. And this just reminded me so much about like preparing a class for kids, because you cannot prepare a class, right? You just have to have a bucket, which you bring. And that's exactly kind of the same with clients like that. So you really have to step back and say, I had something in mind, I prepared something, but you have to have something else in your sleeve, which you can bring them up. And then starting, obviously, the conversation with them again to see, why might that be right now? Seeing a little bit, obviously, after time, you get to know them. So you are a bit more sure where it might be, lingering and what you kind of can do to pull it out. But yeah, I think and also difficult, obviously, as a high achiever myself, to say, okay, whatever. I had a script, but it doesn't matter. It's a mirror. You can only meet someone as far as you've come, and if you're now flexible enough to say, okay, it is okay, but I know something else right now which might be helpful. It's not that you lost your preparation or you didn't prepare well. It's just, adapting to the situation.
Yeah, fully agreed. So I don't want to, I did get ahead of myself a little bit there, but did you want to add any other like favorite techniques or things that work particularly well with that target group in your experience?
I think just in general that, our brain believes what we repeat or teach it, not necessarily what's true in that moment. And I'm really, really determined on the thought that thoughts create feelings, feelings then lead to actions, and actually actions create identity and personality, which we can then actually shape. And I had a client the other day who said, you really have to share that on the podcast, because I shared like with him, I'm going to see you in a few weeks. And he said, it was so helpful. You have to share that. And Katja, how many doors are you passing every day?
Oh, that is an excellent question that I absolutely cannot answer.
Okay. Are you just like crossing it? It's not about the number, but are you crossing one or like many?
A couple. A couple for
right?
Sure.
It depends if we're in home office or wherever we're going, right? So I asked that person, because he's a lawyer and had quite, an important case for himself. And I said, please, before you go through that doorframe out of your house and in the court, the big important doors, just, tell something good to yourself. I'm going to do my best. I will win the case, I will win the minute. I will win the second, whatever it is. Whatever good you can say to yourself will make a difference. And now he told me he's kind of doing it into, every doorframe passing, or even just a smile, because it became his habit. And he likes it so much. And he said it changed so much for his mindset that it was very helpful. So maybe, that's what I wanted to still share.
The door, that resonates a lot, actually, coincidentally. Years back, so my first life was in the corporate world as well. Oh my God, more than 20 years ago now. So I had one of those future management kind of courses, and that was quite intense. So it was quite the intense week, and we had each little one-on-ones, or where we worked with the group on something, and a lot of the time self-talk came up, which kind of resonates with what you said, or kind of goes back to that. And one technique that was shared, which I loved, was kind of similar, but I like yours maybe even more. So the combination of what I'm about to say and yours. So it was, when you cannot shut up your inner monkey mind, imagine a door and go through it as if it was like a refreshing waterfall, and leave everything else behind. So it was about visualizing that door that helps you do it. And after that, I actually took photos of quite a lot of doors that inspired me, that I used for my visualization. So I love that combo, kind of like stepping through the door, washing away what was, but then also combining that with something positive as I step through the door onto the other side. I'm using the door quite a lot, actually, the refreshing washing off kind of one, but I will definitely add adding something positive to it. I think doors are great.
I like that.
I love that.
I might do that now as well. Yeah, let's see. Maybe we do it when they leave the house, they can just wash something off, and then with everything else.
But yeah,
I love it. Thanks for sharing.
We were having a good door talk. I like that. It's a good one. Yeah. Great technique. Any other specific ones that you'd like to share?
I would say, for the ones who feel a bit overwhelmed and it's a bit too much, and you maybe have the next meeting, or you have your little one crying again in the living room waiting for you, just my SOS grounding breath, or so we can, for example, find 5 things we can see, 4 things we can feel with our skin, for example, 3 things we can hear, 2 things we can smell, and 1 thing we can maybe taste. You can also choose if you just do one by one, if it's still in the beginning a bit much, but actually, counting down then from 5 to 1 can be quite a helpful one.
Also a nice one that really grounds you in the present moment, which I'm guessing is a recurring theme, specifically with this group, with a lot of other people as well, of course, but with this one as well. Yeah, quite good and graspable techniques there. I think that many people will be able to relate to use in any kind of context. I love that. We already peeked around the corner a little bit earlier, talking about the other side of the coin, so the teaching side of things, because I'm guessing that's also part of your inner work, your reflection, and part of the challenge in working with high achievers. You mentioned like the CEO here, or the lawyer there, who has quite high expectations towards you as a yoga facilitator. What are some of the challenges, or the aspects of the work that require work on your end? And then maybe later we can also talk about some techniques or some recommendations you have there.
I would say definitely, first of all, don't feed perfectionism, and try to meet the person in front of you for who they are, and not what they do for a profession. And really try to connect with them in a human sense, because I actually realized that especially those type of people are often feeling, showing my weakness or telling someone how I actually feel today, because it's not that great, it shows obviously their weakness, and it's not okay. And it's still, again, this, it has to be all perfect and it has to be good. So trying to also share the humanity of your side. For me, it's also quite easy in the sense of saying, I've been there too. I felt that pressure, and that's actually why I had to walk away, because for me it was just not. I couldn't maintain it anymore. I was not able. Otherwise, I kind of would have lost myself. So finding that way of, the humanity in it and the compassion. I would say compassion is a big part of it. And in the practice, maybe eventually over time, rather the quiet presence than the overcueing. So into, again, that feeling of things. And when you have a lot of clients like that, you don't know with whom you're starting. You don't sometimes know how long you will actually work together. Prioritizing your own recovery is really important. And then seeing how you can actually schedule your appointments. It fits quite well to the recent hustle episode you did with Tiffany. I think
number 146, if you're wondering.
Perfect. Yeah, you should watch that or listen to it. No, really, it fits quite well to that, and reflecting to your own patterns and finding kind of the balance within. And that's again what I also said early on. You can only meet your clients as far as you've come yourself. If you didn't do your own healing or your stress and resilience work before, then it might be a bit tricky.
Little question in between on the calm presence. I find myself when I work with high achieving professions, for example, in one-on-ones, they do not come in when they work with me from 3 hours of sauna, an hour of quiet coffee drinking, tea drinking, and newspaper reading, and kind of already zoned out and in the Zen zone, but they come in maybe in their lunch break or maybe in the morning before they go to work. They're already kind of in the hustle vibe maybe, or they come in after their work day, and they're already, that they spent a lot of energy during their day. So they do not meet me when they are in a Zen kind of space. And what I find tricky sometimes with that calm state I'm meeting them is, I want to meet them where they are. And I often feel like I'm mirroring that a little bit. Mm-hmm. I have found over time, I'm okay with that. I understand that to be kind of a mirror state. And I think if I would be totally in a Zen mode and they are coming in, rushing in, kind of with one foot still in the other, on the other side of the door, coming back to the doors, very, still rushed or still in their thoughts on their workday. I think it's also, I find for my own work, I think it's also okay to, mirror that energy being a bit more high energy to start with, but then managing the transition towards that calm space. I think that's what challenges me the most, but I also think that's maybe even helpful to not counter them with the spa place vibe, but kind of, meeting them at their vibe a little bit more and then transitioning into a joint calmer space. How do you experience that, or how do you see that?
I'm glad that we talk about that again. So if the people who watched the video, they saw me nodding and shaking my head and smiling. No, it's exactly that, Katja. So you cannot obviously, sit in the room, wait for them, and you want to start meditating. It's not going to work out. No, it's kind of, you have to meet them where they are. And then obviously it's the transition. So the transition is rather the quiet presence you want to lead them in, so they maybe leave in a Zen state. But no, obviously, also kind of, I would say all of the clients I see and meet, they all come kind of in a hustle sense. And, have to maybe talk about things first. And then really maybe even having an active, class and seeing, okay, I would like to let it out first. And then maybe we can transition a little bit more, let's say more from yang to yin in the sense. So no, it would be completely the wrong approach. Or what Tiffany also always likes, and I did the training with both of you for the breath. You don't really start a class with a breath immediately, because you want to maybe settle them in first and see, where they're at. Maybe we start with MFR a little bit of movement, and then see where it leads to.
Yeah, and I think especially when we look at the professional side of things, so people who are in high achieving or high pressure jobs, they typically do not have the luxury for those transition times. Thinking of a surgeon in a hospital, coming back to that example, they rush from one thing to the other. So I think that transitional competence adds to their overall experience there maybe as well, because they are never offered the luxury to transition from one thing to another. Even with kids, like, or moms in the mornings, we don't have that, or that's what sometimes creates then a bit of friction, that the transition is the challenge, or is the tricky part that we don't have the luxury of time for, or that we don't put enough priority on. So yeah, I think the transitions are really essential for all of us, but for this target group, maybe even more so.
Exactly. And then, what is wrong about a moving meditation, or walking meditation for those groups, and then kind of bringing them into the mindful aspect of things again. And then maybe eventually you can really sit down and have a meditation and go into yoga nidra or deeper visualizations, longer shavasana. But most of the time, it doesn't really work in the beginning, no. And it's really something you should not force. I think that's really, really important. And, teaching also yourself from presence, meeting them, even if it's a mirror, and in an authentic way, and not like about performance or your checklist, like, oh, we did a calming class today. It's done. It's all good. I fixed them.
Yeah. Totally. And you mentioned earlier in our conversation also that something along the notion of you can only teach something or share something that you've experienced yourself, or that you've gone through yourself, or at least to some degree can relate to. I mean, you don't have to have lived the same exact experience, of course, but you have to have a notion of, of reflection, or some sort of reflective path or experience that you've gone through, or that you've covered, or experienced. What do you think are some other things that help you, or that you should also take care of as a yoga teacher? And you've mentioned before, I just want to I just threw in the number, podcast number 146. I just want to name the episode as well, for people who had no idea the two of us were referring to. Back there, we had an episode called Hustle Culture Meets Wellness Fear, where we also talked about how hustle culture kind of meets wellness fear, and how yoga teachers might experience that hustle in their work, and what some appropriate or helpful strategies there might be. So do you have some additional ones, or other ones you would like to share, some things that you find is particularly helpful maybe?
So like going back to that, because of course I don't want that people misunderstand me. You can only take your clients as far as you come or gone. It's also really about, like you said, the reflective aspect of it, or the understanding of what they are going through or went through, like either through I don't know, trainings, literature, or whatever you yourself use to maybe have a better human compassion and understanding of certain situations, because obviously, working with trauma patients doesn't mean that you had to have experienced trauma. Just to clarify that quickly, I think that's quite important. And the hustle culture, and I think especially us as yoga teachers, it's easy to fall into that. And then, on top of being a high achiever, doesn't want to be fully committed. It's really about reflecting and stepping back sometimes. So sometimes for people, helps journaling, meditation. For example, when I have a really busy schedule and it's all kind of too much, and I also have a little toddler here at home, usually, it's a preschool child now, but also full of energy, I cannot just sit down and meditate. It's difficult. It's just, I don't have really the mindset for that. And then it's okay if I maybe put music on I really like a lot, or guided meditation, just to still find the way of, I find a balance with it, and I don't have to be so strict with myself why I didn't journal for 2 weeks, or why can I meditate right now? Why can I not just sit down and do something I really want to do? Sometimes it's just, it's sometimes difficult.
It's about the flexible mind again.
Exactly, flexible mind again. And then I would say a big thing obviously comes to seeing that you don't overschedule yourself, and also seeing that you might meet certain people. You can obviously help until a certain extent, especially if you're, for example, working in therapeutics. But I feel community and a network is really, really important. Having, for example, an Ayurvedic massage therapist, and a normal therapist, a psychological one, like other doctors, other practitioners, other yoga teachers, and I really strongly believe that we can help the human being the best way in that sense. Not, taking everything on you. It's not, it's weighing the shoulders way too much anyways. And we only have 24 hours, and there should be also obviously a little bit of breaks, and we can share that, and I think it will always come kind of double back to you. So
yeah. And with the sense of community and also network, two more things I'd like to talk about. So I think community for yourself also, not just to refer to in terms of other professions like massage therapists or all those you mentioned. And that's, of course, important, but also for yourself. I think in other professions that are, let's say, in our realm or close to our realm, oftentimes there are things like supervision, clinical supervision in place. If you're working in psychology, for example, and of course we in yoga don't have that in a structured way. But I think, yeah, any kind of community or mentorship that goes into that direction also extremely helpful. Maybe you want to speak to that for a moment as well. Is that something you
sure.
believe in or you
sure.
focus
No, I
on?
definitely believe in. I think that's very, very important. And I also started building one myself. Like, when you did the introduction, I also call myself somewhat a mentor, like maybe on different levels than I have my own, but that's obvious. But no, I think that's really, really important, having a network and maybe having some events sometimes, or, where you can actually also share your current struggles, what you may be experiencing with a certain client, or, like also just checking in with, there's like, suddenly this pain coming up, where's this maybe coming from? And just like, and then obviously leaving that off your shoulder and then talking about your own maybe struggles and where you feel like, I feel quite exhausted. What can I do? Is it okay to cancel? It's just, it is okay. Finding a way and seeing like, what your own growth can actually be. So you're not getting stuck in a certain spiral, which then also goes maybe into a different direction.
Would be a perfect way to end, but I have one more question, just out of curiosity. How did you get started working with this kind of target group? Was it just because from your prior experience or work life, you had personal connections and it evolved from there? Or what would be some other tips for people who aim to enter that space?
So I always wanted to do it. I kind of knew that, but it was actually a person, I'm still in contact with her, who was a lawyer. And she was one of my case studies for the yoga medicine therapeutic specialist training and the 500 hours. And actually, she became then someone who experienced a risk pregnancy. So she got pregnant and had risk pregnancy, and then also like quite difficult afterwards, a little bit with postpartum problems. And then I think now, let's say 2 years ago, I kind of, I worked with her on that for sure a lot, but before that, so already in the high achiever level, but that was kind of the snippet turning into, pregnancy and everything else. And then it kind of evolved into referrals. And I was like, okay, I'm really quite good at that. And I like doing that. And that's, I call my yoga like resilience yoga, and by Katharina Claeys. And I think it's really something I'm generally interested in, and also for my own journey, my own self, and what I would really like to push forward and grow into. So it was actually kind of a coincidence by, transferring and growing into that kind of. But I always kind of knew because, I struggled so much in working at the government or in the legal field, where I experienced health issues and then I developed an allergy against a painkiller where, my body was like already screaming and I just didn't listen. Thinking back to that now, I'm thinking, how couldn't you just, why didn't you know that? Like, why didn't you realize? So, and that kind of story just, brought you into that direction. And I'm really, really passionate about that. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think it's a great reminder and also a great way to end the episode that sometimes it's just, getting started and having maybe one client in a specific field or one person you start working with, and that it evolves from there. You don't have to have a whole business strategy laid out for the next 10 years, but sometimes things just evolve from there with referrals, and just start by, approaching people you're passionate about, or a thing you're passionate about, a client you're passionate about, and it evolves from there. I think that's also a nice reminder for that as well. So I think
Exactly,
kind of a nice loop there, or a nice ending there. So Katharina, thanks for sharing what your experience with high achieving clients has been like, what their personality traits are, the people who are really on, it's not tied to a job, it's tied to their personality traits, which you will find, of course, also on the yoga mat. You're a good student in quotation marks, which may make it initially easy to work with them, or may, make it easy to give them homework, etc., if you're working in a one-on-one context. But of course, we do not want to reiterate that dynamic to 100% or to a full degree. We want to meet them where they're at. So there will be a sense of mirroring maybe as you start working with them at the start of a session, at the start of your work with them. But over time, hopefully we can also offer them perspective on their pressure situations, which helps them to be flexible in their minds, to be able to downregulate when needed, but also to meet the pressure situations they're in with just a very good and right amount of nervous system regulation. So I think you've shared great techniques with us, doors, specific present moment, present meditations, and others. So I think those are helpful not only for yoga teachers, which may take a lot of things away from this episode, but also for people in high pressure situations themselves. So I think a couple of really great approachable tips that you can take right into your day. And then also, of course, some teaching tips for those of us who are on the facilitating side of things, self-care, but also how to approach that side of the business maybe, and how to grow and learn through community and supervision and creating a network, which you will profit from. Maybe that's the start of working with a specific target group like that, just from one referral you get. But then also taking that further, or taking that on the other side, and creating a network of referral yourself, which makes this sustainable for you. But of course, always keeping the sustainability for our clients there in mind as well, be that through showers, mindful showers and water boiling, or boxes with nice progress notes along the way, which they can keep. So thanks so much for sharing, and thanks so much for, your honesty, your openness, and how you approach this work, how you came to it. And when, if people want to find you, of course, we will include all your social links and whatever links you have. So you will find those in the show notes. Thanks again for being here and sharing all your experience with us.
Thank you so much, Katja. It was a pleasure to be here.
Till next time.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Yoga Medicine. If you like the show, please be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you get something out of this episode, please spread the word and share it with a friend. You can find more information, articles, trainings, and classes at yogamedicine.com, or check us out on social media as Yoga Medicine. You can also email us at info@yogamedicine.com. Thank you for being a part of our Yoga Medicine community.
The content of this podcast is not medical advice and is not meant to replace medical care. Please consult your healthcare provider to determine what is best for your unique healthcare needs.